the Galactic Council Station Harmony. 7 floated silently in the darkness of space, a massive structure of gleaming metal and glass that housed diplomats from 100 different worlds. For 300 years, it had been a place of peace, where conflict were resolved with words instead of weapons. But today, chaos ruled its polished corridors. Princess Lyra sat alone in her luxury suite on the 47th floor. Her skin, normally bright with soft blue and green light, had turned a dull gray. Tears ran down her face like tiny rivers, each drop hitting the floor with a soft hiss. Where the tears landed, the metal floor began to smoke and bubble. The acid in her tears was eating through the expensive flooring, leaving small holes that grew bigger with each passing hour. She had been crying for 3 days without stopping. Outside her door, Ambassador Vexlar walked back and forth nervously. He was tall and thin, with 4 long arms that he waved around as he talked. His purple skin had turned almost white with worry. He grabbed Station Director Beaumont by the shoulder with 2 of his hands. "Your council has failed," Vexlar shouted, his voice shaking with anger and fear. "We have tried everything. Every delicacy from our home world, every form of entertainment, every comfort we could think of. She rejects it all. The princess is wasting away before our eyes, and with her, our alliance dies." Director Beaumont, a tired-looking human woman with gray hair, rubbed her temples. She had not slept in 2 days. "We've brought in therapists from 6 different species. We've offered her anything she wants. What more can we do?" "I don't know," Vexlar admitted, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But if she dies here, the Kothai Empire will consider an act of war. They will blame the Council. Millions could die." Inside the suite, Lyra pushed away another tray of food. The servants had brought her favorite dishes from home, or at least that's what they said. The food looked exactly right. It smelled exactly right. The colors were perfect. The temperature was perfect. The presentation was beautiful. But it tasted wrong. It tasted empty. Lyra's people were different from most species in the galaxy. They didn't just taste food with their tongues. They tasted emotions, memories, and feelings. When someone cooked with love, they could taste that love. When someone prepared food while thinking happy thoughts, those thoughts became part of the flavor. Food was more than nutrition for the Kothai. It was a way to connect with others, to feel what they felt. The food on the tray before her had been made by machines. Perfect machines that followed exact recipes, that measured every ingredient down to the molecule, that cooked at precisely the right temperature. But machines had no emotions. They had no memories. They couldn't love or care or worry. The food they made was technically perfect, but it was hollow inside. It tasted like loneliness made solid. "I want to go home," Lyra whispered to herself. Her voice was so quiet that even the servants standing nearby couldn't hear her. "I want real food. Food made by hands that remember. Food made by hearts that care." But home was impossibly far away. 6 sectors of space separated her from her planet. The journey would take weeks, and the treaty signing was scheduled for 2 days from now. This treaty was important. It would bring the Kothai Empire into the Galactic Council, ending centuries of isolation. It would open trade routes, share technology, and prevent a war that had been threatening to start for decades. But none of that mattered to Lyra right now. She was 16 years old, away from home for the first time, surrounded by aliens who didn't understand her. She missed her mother. She missed her bedroom. She missed the cook who had made her breakfast every morning since she was a baby, who hummed old songs while she worked, who always knew exactly how Lyra was feeling. Another tear fell, hissing as it hit the floor. Down below, on the lower levels of the station where the maintenance workers live, a man named Jiho Kim was getting ready for his night shift. He put on his gray uniform, picked up his mop and bucket, and headed out into the corridors. He had no idea that in a few hours, his simple life was about to change. He had no idea that he was about to save not just a princess, but potentially millions of lives across the galaxy, all because of a bowl of rice porridge. Jiho Kim had worked the night shift at Harmony 7 Station for 3 years. Every night was the same. He clocked in at 10, picked up his cleaning supplies, and walked the empty corridors until 6 in the morning. He mopped floors, fixed small problems, and made sure everything was clean for the morning shift. He didn't mind the work. In fact, he preferred it this way. The station was quiet at night. No crowds, no noise, no one asking him questions. Just him, his mop, and the gentle hum of the station's engines. It was peaceful, simple. He was invisible, and that was exactly how he wanted it. Before this job, Geo had been many things. He had served in the military for 10 years. Before that, he had been a cook in his family's small restaurant back on Earth. But those days were behind him now. He was 45 years old, tired, and happy to just push a mop bucket to metallic hallways without anyone bothering him. His comm device beeped, breaking the silence. His supervisor's voice crackled through the small speaker. "Kim, we need you on level 47. Royal Suite area. Acid damage again. Third time this week." Geo sighed and pressed a button on his comm. "On my way." He loaded his equipment onto a small cart. Neutralizing foam for acid damage, replacement floor panels, safety gloves, and his regular cleaning supplies. He pushed the cart to the nearest lift and pressed a button for level 47. The diplomatic quarters were on the upper levels of the station, where Jiho rarely went. Up there, everything was fancier. The floors were polished to a mirror shine. The walls were decorated with art from 100 different worlds. Even the air smelled expensive somehow, like flowers and spices he couldn't name. When the lift doors opened on level 47, the smell hit him immediately. It was sharp and bitter, like chemicals burning. It made his eyes water. He pushed his cart down the corridor, following the smell to its source. Outside the royal suite, there was chaos. Ambassador Vexlar, the tall purple alien with 4 arms, was shouting at someone. A Korthai chef, her skin glowing a stressed orange color, was shouting back. Station security guards stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. Servants rushed in and out of the suite, carrying trays of untouched food. Geo parked his cart at a respectful distance and put on his safety gloves. He could see the damage on the floor near the doorway. Small smoking holes where the acid tears had eaten through the metal. He knelt down and started applying the neutralizing foam. "I've replicated every dish from the Imperial Palace," the chef was yelling at the ambassador. "Perfect molecular structure, exact temperature, proper presentation. I've done everything right." "Obviously not everything." Vexlar shot back, waving all of her arms in frustration. "She refuses to eat. She says it tastes like sadness, like loneliness made solid. What does that even mean?" The chef threw her hands up. "How can food taste like emotions? I followed every recipe exactly." Jiho worked quietly, trying not to listen. It wasn't his business. He was just here to clean up the damage and leave. But the voices were loud, and the door to the suite was partially open. Then he heard a different voice. Younger, weaker. It came from inside the suite. "The food has no memory," the voice said. It was the princess. "No one's hands touched it. No one thought of me while making it. I can taste the emptiness. I can taste that no one cares." Geo paused, his gloved hand hovering over a patch of damaged floor. Those words hit him somewhere deep in his chest. He remembered something his grandmother used to say, back when he was a child in her kitchen. "Food made without love is just fuel," she would tell him while stirring a pot of soup. "Food made with care is medicine for the soul." His grandmother had been a cook her whole life. She had taught him that cooking wasn't just about following recipes. It was about putting yourself into the food, your time, your attention, your feelings. When you cooked for someone you cared about, they could taste it, not with their tongue, but with their heart. Gio stood up. He didn't plan what happened next. His body just moved on its own. He walked to the door of the suite and knocked. Immediately, 2 security guards grabbed his arms. "What are you doing?" one of them demanded. "This is a restricted area. You're not authorized to." "Wait," came the princess's voice from inside the suite. "Let him speak." The guards loosened their grip, but didn't let go. Everyone turned to look at Jiho. Ambassador Vexlar, the chef, the servants, the security team, all eyes on the janitor in the gray uniform. The door slid fully open. Princess Lyra stood there, her face wet with tears, her skin dim and gray. She looked so young and so sad that Gio's heart ached for her. He cleared his throat. His mouth felt dry. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I heard you say the food has no memory, that no one's hands touched it." He paused, searching for the right words. "My grandmother used to make me juk, rice porridge. Simple food, nothing fancy. But when I was sick, she would stay up all night making it. She would stir the pot herself, slowly, thinking about me the whole time. Every spoonful had her worry in it. Her love, her hands that had made it 1,000 times before." The princess stared at him. Her dull skin flickered with a tiny bit of light. "Would that kind of food help?" Gio asked. "Food made with hands that remember, with a heart that cares." Princess Lyra's eyes went wide. For the first time in 3 days, something other than sadness crossed her face. "Hope, you can make this juk?" she asked, her voice trembling. "With your own hands? With memory in it?" Gio nodded slowly. "Yes, your Highness. If they let me." The princess turned to Ambassador Vexlar. Her voice was still weak, but it carried command. "Give him a kitchen. Right now." The community kitchen on level 12 was usually empty at this hour. It was a simple space where station workers could cook their own meals instead of eating the synthesized food from the cafeteria. Most nights, maybe 1 or 2 people used it. Tonight, it was packed with people. Ambassador Vexlar stood near the wall, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. His face showed doubt. He didn't believe that a simple human janitor could succeed where the best Korthai chefs had failed. But the princess had demanded this, so here he was. Station Director Beaumont watched from a screen on the wall. Her tired face looked even more worried than before. "This is highly irregular," she muttered to her assistant. "What if something goes wrong? What if the food makes her sick? We don't have proper protocols for this." A dozen security officers formed a circle around the kitchen area. They watched Gio's every move, hands ready to grab him if he did anything suspicious. Some of them whispered to each other, wondering what was happening. In the center of all this attention, Jiho Kim stood at a simple metal counter. He tried to ignore the stares, the whispers, the pressure. He focused on the ingredients laid out before him. Real ingredients. Not the fake stuff that came from the food synthesizers. These were real. He had rice that he'd grown himself in a small garden plot on the station's hydroponic level. Station workers were allowed a small space to grow whatever they wanted, and Jiho had chosen rice. It reminded him of home, of earth, of his grandmother's kitchen. The grains were short and round, perfect for porridge. Next to the rice sat a piece of ginger root. He'd been growing it for 6 months, carefully tending to it. The root was small but fresh, with that sharp, clean smell that made his eyes water a little when he cut it. There were spring onions, green and crisp, a small bottle of sesame oil that he'd been saving for a special occasion, and most importantly, chicken stock that he'd made himself 3 weeks ago. He'd spent hours making it, boiling bones and vegetables, skimming off the fat, letting it cook low and slow until it was rich and golden. Then he'd frozen it in small containers, never knowing he'd use it to help save a princess. "This is what will save our alliance," Ambassador Vexlar said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Peasant food? Simple grain and water." Jiho didn't respond. He'd learned long ago not to argue with people who had already made up their minds. Instead, he picked up the rice in a bowl. He poured the rice into the bowl and carried it to the sink. He turned on the water and began to wash the rice. Once, twice, 3 times. The water ran white with starch at first, then slowly became clearer. This was how his grandmother had taught him. "Wash it 3 times, she'd said. The first time to wake it up, the second time to clean it, the third time to show it respect." As he worked, Gio began to speak. His voice was quiet, but in the silent kitchen, everyone could hear him. "My grandmother made this for me when I was 7 years old," he said, watching the water run clear. "I had a fever, high fever. My mother was worried I would die. My grandmother stayed up all night in the kitchen, making juk. She stirred the pot for hours, making sure it didn't burn, making sure it was just right. When I finally ate it, the fever broke." He drained the rice and carried it to the stove. He poured into a large pot and added the chicken stock. The rich smell filled the kitchen immediately. When I joined the military, I got injured in training. Jiho continued, turning on the heat. Broke my leg in 3 places. I was in the hospital for 2 months. My mother came to visit me every day. She wasn't allowed to cook in a hospital, but she found a way. She made juk in a rice cooker in the waiting room and brought it to me still warm. She cried while making it because she was so worried about me. He began to stir the pot slowly in steady circles. The rice started to break down, releasing its starch into the stock. The mixture began to turn creamy and white. Ambassador Vexlar's expression softened slightly. He stopped crossing his arms. When my mother died 5 years ago, I made this of myself, Gio said, his voice quieter now. I sat in my small apartment, stirring the pot, and I cried. I put my sadness into it, my memories of her, my love for her. When I ate it, I felt like she was with me again. He reached for the ginger and began to slice it into thin strips. His knife moved with practiced ease, cutting perfect pieces. Humans put pieces of themselves into food, he explained. We put our time into it, our memories, our feelings. When we cook something that matters, we leave marks on it that you can't see with your eyes. But they're there. Princess Lyra had entered the kitchen quietly during his story. She stood at the back of the crowd, watching with wide eyes. Her skin was still dim, but small flickers of light were starting to appear. Gio added the ginger to the pot. The smell changed, became sharper, more complex. He stirred carefully, adjusting the heat, watching the consistency. This was a critical part. Too much heat and it would burn. Too little and it would be watery. It had to be just right. Every time we make something for someone we care about, we put a fingerprint on it, Jiho said. Not a real fingerprint. An invisible one, made of attention, care, and love. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Jiho stirred patiently, lost in the rhythm of it. He added a pinch of salt, tasted it, added a bit more stock. The porridge was getting thicker, creamier, perfect. Finally, after 40 minutes, it was ready. He turned off the heat and ladled the juk into a simple white bowl. He drizzled sesame oil over the top in a careful spiral. He sprinkled the chopped spring onions on last, their green color bright against the white porridge. He picked up the bowl with both hands and turned to face Princess Lyra. "It's ready, Your Highness," he said simply. The princess walked forward slowly, as if the bowl were something sacred. The crowd parted for her. Security officers stepped back. Even Ambassador Vexlar moved aside. Lyra took the bowl from Jiho's hands. She looked down at the simple food. Just rice porridge with a few toppings. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but made with care. She picked up the spoon with a shaking hand. She scooped up a small amount and lifted it to her lips. Everyone in the kitchen held their breath. Princess Lyra tasted the juk. Her skin exploded with light, brilliant gold and white and blue, colors so bright that people had to shield their eyes. She gasped, tears streaming down her face, but these were different tears, not tears of sadness. Through the food, through every grain of rice and drop of stock, she could taste everything. Gio's grandmother's old hands, still stirring the pot at dawn even though her joints hurt. His mother's tears falling into the porridge as she worried about her injured son. Gio's own loneliness, light years from Earth, transformed into careful attention and genuine care. She could taste that someone had loved this food into existence. The princess looked at Jiho with wonder and began to eat. Princess Lyra set down the empty bowl. She had eaten every last bite, scraping the sides with her spoon to get the final drops of sesame oil. For the first time in 3 days, her skin glowed with steady, healthy light. Blues and greens and soft golds pulsed gently across her face and arms. She looked alive again. She stared at Jiho with an expression of wonder and disbelief. Her eyes were still wet, but now the tears were different. They were tears of relief, of understanding, of something found after being lost. "I tasted your whole life in that bowl," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. "Your grandmother's kitchen. I could see it, smell it, feel the warmth from her stove. I tasted your mother's love, the way she worried about you. I tasted your loneliness here among the stars, so far from home. It was beautiful. It was real. Ambassador Vexlar pushed through the crowd, his forearms reaching toward the princess. Princess Lyra, you're better? You ate? You actually ate. His voice cracked with emotion. He had been so afraid, so worried that she would waste away and die. I'm better, Lyra confirmed, nodding. She wiped the tears from her face with the back of her hand. I understand now. I finally understand what's been wrong. What do you mean? Vexlar asked, confused. What do you understand? Lyra turned to face the crowd of people watching her. Security officers, kitchen staff, station workers who had gathered to see what was happening. Station Director Beaumont on the screen, leaning forward with interest, and Jiho, standing quietly with his hands at his sides, looking uncomfortable with all the attention. What I've been missing isn't just home, Lyra said softly. It's not my planet or my palace or my bedroom. It's authenticity, real connection, real care. She gestured around the kitchen, at all the people assembled there. The Galactic Council has been trying so hard to make me comfortable. They've offered us treaties written by lawyers who don't care about us, only about the words on the page. They've given me food made by machines that have no feelings, no memories, no soul. They presented gifts selected by computer algorithms that calculate what I should like, but don't actually know me. Ambassador Vexlar's expression slowly changed from confusion to understanding. His eyes widened. Everything has been perfect in form, Lyra continued. The treaties are legally flawless. The food is molecularly identical to what I eat at home. The gifts are expensive and appropriate, but it's all hollow inside. There's no essence to it, no heart. She picked up the empty bowl and held it up for everyone to see. This is just rice and water and a few simple ingredients. Any machine could make it. Any synthesizer could replicate the exact chemical structure, but it wouldn't be the same. Because this... She tapped the bowl. This was made by someone who cares. Someone who put his memories into it, his feelings, his attention. I could taste all of that. Station Director Beaumont spoke from the screen. Princess, are you saying that our entire approach has been wrong? That all our diplomatic efforts have failed because they weren't personal enough? Yes, Lyra said simply. My people, the Kurthai, we experience emotions differently than most species. We can taste feelings. We can sense authenticity. When someone truly cares, we know. When someone is just going through the motions, we know that too. The Council has been going through the motions. Perfect motions, but motions nonetheless. She turned to Jiho. This man is a janitor. He has no rank, no title, no diplomatic training. He cleans floors for a living. But he offered me something real. Something from his heart. He shared his grandmother's recipe, his mother's love, his own loneliness. He gave me a piece of his life, and that's what I needed. That's what we all need. Jiho shuffled his feet, looking down. I just made some juk, Your Highness. I didn't mean to... You saved my life, Lyra interrupted gently. And maybe you saved millions of others too. If I had died here, my people would have blamed the Council. There would have been war. But you showed me something important. You showed me that some people in this galaxy still understand what really matters. She turned back to the crowd, her voice growing stronger. Humanity understands something that the rest of the galaxy has forgotten. They know that the smallest act of genuine care carries more weight than the grandest empty gesture. A handwritten note means more than a perfect digital message. A home-cooked meal means more than the fanciest synthesized dinner. Time and attention are the most valuable things anyone can give. Ambassador Vexlar stood very still, processing this information. His people had been negotiating with the Galactic Council for 5 years. 5 years of perfect meetings, perfect presentations, perfect everything. And none of it had worked because none of it had been real. Then we've been doing everything wrong, he said quietly. All of us. The entire council. Yes, Lyra agreed. You have. So what do we do? Beaumont asked from the screen. How do we fix this? The treaty signing is in 2 days. If we can't make this work. Lyra held up a hand to stop her. Show us you care. not with contracts of machines and algorithms. Show us with your hands, your time, your hearts. Let us taste that you genuinely want this alliance, not just politically, but personally. She looked around the room at all the different species represented. Humans, Centauri, THYSS Vorksians, and more. Each of you has something like this, don't you? Some tradition, some food, some act that shows real care in your culture? Heads nodded around the room. Everyone understood what she meant. Everyone had something that meant home, that meant love, that meant someone cared. Then show us, Lyra said. Show us those things. Let us experience your authenticity. That's how we build real alliances, not with lawyers and machines, but with shared humanity, or whatever each of our species has that makes us care about each other. The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking, processing, understanding. The solution had been so simple all along. They just needed to care, really care, and show it in ways that were real. Geo spoke up quietly from a spot near the stove. My grandmother used to say that you can have all the technology in the world, but if you don't care about people, really care, it means nothing. She said that love shows up in actions, in the time you spend, the attention you give, the effort you make. Princess Lyra smiled at him, her skin glowing bright with genuine happiness. Your grandmother was very wise. She was, Jiho agreed, a small sad smile on his face. She really was. Ambassador Vexlar straightened his shoulders. A new determination showed on his face. Then we will do this right. We will show you, Princess. We will show your whole empire. The treaty will be signed, but it will be signed with heart, not just with ink. Lyra nodded. Good. That's all we've ever wanted. To know that this alliance matters to you as much as it matters to us. 3 days later, the treaty signing took place, but not in the Grand Council chamber where such events usually happened. Not in the huge room with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers and thousands of seats for observers. Instead, it happened in the station's community kitchen. The kitchen had been expanded for the occasion. Station engineers had knocked down walls and added extra cooking stations. Now it was 3 times its original size, filled with stoves and counters and preparation areas. But it still felt warm and homey, not cold and formal like the council chamber. Representatives from each species in the Galactic Council stood at their own cooking stations. They weren't wearing their fancy diplomatic robes. They wore aprons. They had flour on their hands and spices on their clothes. They looked nervous, but in a different way than usual. Not nervous about politics, but nervous about getting their recipes right. At the first station, the Centauri ambassador worked with dough. His name was Krev, and he was an old diplomat who had negotiated 100 treaties. But right now, he looked like someone's grandfather in a kitchen. His 6 fingers moved carefully, folding the dough over and over. He was making spice bread, the kind his mother had taught him to make when he was just a child. Fold it 20 times, he muttered to himself, repeating his mother's instructions from 70 years ago. Not 19, not 21. 20 times exactly. That's when the bread knows you care. At the next station, the THYSS delegate grilled vegetables over an open flame. Her people didn't usually cook with fire anymore. They had modern equipment. Synthesizers, all the latest technology. But this recipe was old, passed down through generations. It required real fire, real smoke, real attention. She turned each vegetable carefully, watching for the perfect char marks her grandmother had shown her. The human delegation had taken over 3 stations. They were making different dishes from different parts of Earth. One woman made kimchi jjigae, the spicy stew her father used to make on cold days. A man stirred a pot of pasta sauce. The recipe his Italian grandmother had brought from Earth to the colonies. Another prepared curry, the exact blend of spices his mother had taught him. There were 20 different species represented, 20 different cooking stations, 20 different smells filling the air. Spices and smoke and herbs and things that couldn't be named. The kitchen had become a celebration of cultures, of memories, of care passed down through time. Princess Lyra walked slowly between the stations. Her skin glowed with steady, healthy light. She was dressed simply, not in her royal gowns, but in plain clothes. She carried a small plate and a spoon. At each station, she stopped and watched the cooking process. Then she asked for a small taste. At the Centauri station, Ambassador Krev offered her a piece of his bread. Still warm from the oven, Lyra took a small bite and closed her eyes. Her skin flickered with colors, warm oranges and yellows. "I can taste your mother's patience," she said softly. "The 100 times she showed you how to fold the dough. You were frustrated at first. Your fingers were too small, but she was gentle with you. She never got angry." Krev's eyes widened. He nodded slowly, a small smile on his face. Yes, exactly like that. How did you know?" "I can taste it," Lyra explained. "It's all there in the bread." She moved to the THYSS station. The delegate offered her a piece of grilled vegetable, still smoking slightly. Lyra tasted it, and her colors shifted to deep purples and blues. "Your grandmother made this over a campfire," Lyra said. "You were young. It was a celebration of some kind. Everyone was happy. She taught you to wait for the exact right moment to turn each piece. Patience," she said. "Cooking teaches patience." The THYSS delegate's eyes filled with tears. "My bonding ceremony. When I became an adult. She made this for me. I haven't thought about that day in 30 years. Station after station, Lyra tasted and experienced. She felt the human woman's father coming home tired from work, but still cooking because his daughter loved the stew. She tasted the Italian grandmother's hands, wrinkled and strong, stirring sauce while humming old songs. She experienced the careful love in the curry, made by a mother who wanted her son to remember home even when he traveled the stars. Each dish told a story. Each flavor carried memories. And through her unique Korthai biology, Lyra could experience all of it. She could taste that these people genuinely wanted this alliance, not for politics or power or trade benefits, but because they cared. They cared about connection, about understanding, about building something real together. Ambassador Vexlar watched from the side of the room. He had been skeptical 3 days ago. He had thought this was foolish, that peasant food couldn't solve diplomatic problems. But now he understood. Now he saw Princess Lyra glowing with happiness, saw the other diplomats relaxed and smiling as they cooked, saw a real connection happening in a way that 1,000 formal meetings could never achieve. After Lyra had visited every station, everyone gathered around a large table. The table was covered with dishes from 20 different worlds. Not perfect synthesized copies, but real food made by real hands with real care. The treaty document sat in the center of the table, surrounded by all this food. Station Director Beaumont stood up to speak. "This is unprecedented," she said. "Treaties are usually signed in formal chambers with witnesses and recorded statements. But today, we're doing something different. Today, we're signing this treaty surrounded by the most important thing any species can offer, our care for one another." Princess Lyra stood next, her voice clear and strong. "For the Korthai Empire, I accept this alliance. Not because the treaty terms are perfect, though they are fair. Not because we need the political benefits, though they will help both our peoples. I accept because I have tasted your authenticity. I know now that this alliance matters to you, that we matter to you." She picked up the signing stylus. But before she signed, she said one more thing. "Let this be the foundation of our alliance. Not just words on a page, but genuine care. Let us always remember that the smallest act of real attention means more than the grandest empty gesture." She signed the treaty. Then, one by one, each representative signed. As they did, they each took a plate of food and sat down together at the table. Not assigned seats by rank or importance, but wherever they wanted, mixed together, sharing food, talking and laughing. The Centauri ambassador sat next to a human delegate, teaching him how to properly tear the spice bread. The THYSS delegate shared her grilled vegetables with Vorkshin, explaining the old traditions behind the recipe. Everywhere, people connected not as politicians, but as people who cared about each other. Jiho stood at the back of the room, watching it all. He was still just a janitor in a gray uniform. But Ambassador Vexlar found him there and approached with purpose. "The Council wishes to offer you a position," Vexlar said. "Cultural Ambassador of Human Culinary Traditions. You would teach others what you've taught us. That care matters. That attention matters. That love can be put into action. Jiho blinked in surprise. I'm just a janitor who can cook.